maybe some Southeast Asian fans may deride it as a waste of time. Like, why do they need the additional space? But incidentally, having the ASEAN Club, the revival of the ASEAN Club Championship in the Shopee Cup has allowed the Lion City Sailors and Buriram United to have additional overseas match competition and exposure. In this case, even though the Sailors did not reach the semi-finals, but these games proved to be useful for Rankovic to test out a few players, especially when they're up against different types of Southeast Asian opposition at the group stage, particularly when they defeated KLCT and drew 0-0 with Buriram. So, congratulations to Lion City Sailors for becoming the first Singaporean team to reach the AFC an Asian Club Competition final after they defeated Sydney FC of Australia 2-1 on aggregate in the ACL2 AFC Champions League 2 semi-final yesterday evening. And in doing so, they joined an exclusive list of Southeast Asian clubs that had reached a final of an Asian club competition. And now Singapore has joined the ranks of Malaysia, Thailand, and even Cambodia and Vietnam in these few Southeast Asian nations who have made their rare venture to the pinnacle of the Asian Club Competition final, whether it is in the AFC Champions League or previously known as the Asian Club Championship, or in the current iteration of the AFC Champions League Elite, or the second tier ACL2, or previously known as the AFC Cup, or even the ongoing AFC Challenge League, or previously known as the AFC Challenge Cup or President's Cup. Whichever the level of Asian club competition is, to be able to reach an Asian club final is an enormous achievement in itself. And in doing so, the Sailors have now joined 3 Malaysian clubs: Johor Darul Takzin, who won the AFC Cup in 2015, Kuala Lumpur City, who reached the AFC Cup final in 2022, and Selangkah FC, who actually reached the final of the previously known Asian Club Championship way back in 1967. Then you also have your now defunct Thai Farmers Bank, who won back-to-back Asian Club Championship in 94 and 95. BC Terros Asana, who reached the final of the inaugural AFC Champions League in 2003. And then you also have Phnom Penh Crown, who reached the final of the AFC President's Cup, the third tier competition, back in 2012. And I think Yadanabon of Myanmar, who reached another edition of the AFC President's Cup and lifted the trophy a year later, if I recall correctly. And with Sailors reaching the AFC Champions League 2 final, and also Buriram in the AFC Champions League Elite quarterfinals, as well as Johor Darul Takzin, who unfortunately lost to Buriram in the ACLE round 16. Actually, this season it shows that having the right recruitment of foreign players and a good stable of local players play an integral role in Southeast Asian clubs going much further than in previous campaigns. And why is that so? Nigeria attempts to find out the reasons behind Southeast Asian clubs doing well in the Asian club competitions this year. And yes, I also include your Madura United and Priyankanrich Sereng of Cambodia, who are currently in the semi-finals of the AFC Challenge League. I think in this season is a watershed when it comes to Asian club competition, particularly in the rules where foreign players are considered. I think while it's supposed to mainly help the Saudi clubs, the AFC decided to this season introduced an unlimited foreign player quota for all Asian club competitions. While the Middle Eastern teams are supposedly the main beneficiaries of this, Southeast Asian clubs have also generally risen to the challenge as well. And we can see in throughout these seasons, Asian club competitions where the Lion City Sailors, Johor Darul Takzim and Buriram United pulling out all stops to recruit the best available quality foreigners able to compete in the highest levels possible in Asian club competition. Because for this season, I think the stakes are a lot higher. With revamped competition formats in the ACLE and higher prize money in ACL2 and the revival of the third tier AFC Challenge League after some years of dormancy, it's clear that the AFC means business when it comes to their Asian club competition, and they do want clubs in Asia to thrive in this format. And while when it comes to local born players per se, who are actually the core of those teams, Sailors, Buriram and Johor where they are concerned, but having high quality imports. When I say high quality imports, in this case I do mean players who have played extensively in European professional leagues, players who have featured very competitively in Asia previously as well, whether it's for national team in the case of Diong Kus, the Malaysian international who plays for Buriram, or even your players like Arif Aiman and others who have also featured in the Teotom Bumantam and the like, who have also featured in the AFC Asian Cup finals last year. And in the Sailors case, they have a very eclectic mix of high quality imports and experienced experienced locals who help to push the Sailors towards the finishing line in becoming the first Singaporean team to reach the ACL 2 final. And in a way, it's a bit similar to how Johor also reached and won the ACL, the AFC Cup back in 2015, and Kuala Lumpur City, how they pushed themselves this hard to reach the AFC Cup final in 2022. And Buriram United, who actually repeated the feats where they reached the quarterfinals of the ACLE, matching their previous highest attempt when they reached the ACL quarterfinals way back in 2013. So they matched that level. So in this case, Buriram has always led the way when it comes to getting quality foreigners, even with the previous quota of 4 imports where one must be from an AFC member association. They led the way when it comes to scouting for foreign players who have actually played in good levels. But now with the proliferation of foreign players, because there's no quota this season, Southeast Asian clubs in particular have benefited from this generous ruling. It allowed the leading clubs in Southeast Asia to focus on quality recruitment. We talk about Buriram, who are still in the ACLE quarterfinals, which is set to be played in a centralized location in Saudi Arabia later this month. They got not just your Australian defender Curtis Good or Diong Kus, but they also have a number of decent Brazilian players, and if I recall correctly, a very good mix of import players from Europe and South America who help complement the local talent. And although they are not as high profile as those from Johor, where particularly in the latter stages they got players who used to play in La Liga I mean Alvaro Gonzalez, Samu Castillejo, and the like. But Buriram show that when you have a good core of quality imports, which partially also helps that their league allows 7 foreigners to be used in every Thai League 1 matches. So that has allowed Buriram to rotate their foreigners and prepare them, get themselves match fit for their Asian club assignments, and also in the ASEAN Club Championship Shopee Cup, where they are currently in the semi-finals of the competition. Yeah, so the ASEAN Club Championship, or Shopee Cup as it's known, also plays an indirect part in the Sailors and Buriram doing very well in this season's Asian Club competition. But I will still touch on the foreigners first before going into the Shopee Cup. So when it comes to foreigners for the Sailors case, over the past 2 or 3 seasons, they have actually added former European youth internationals such as Belgium under 21 international Maxime Lestienne, and it's followed by former Germany under 21 striker Lennart T, who has had extensive Bundesliga and Eredivisie experience, and also Bart Ramselaar, who has had plenty of experience playing in the Eredivisie. And when you have these 3 guys leading the forward line alongside Shawa Anwar, the top Singaporean striker at this moment, it is quite inevitable that you are going to have a high quality forward line who can cause problems for many Asian defenses at this level, and in this case, in this context, the ACL too. And it also helped that they utilize their home advantage very well, but you can only home advantage when it comes to artificial Jalan Besar turf can only be as good as the players that the Sailors have at their disposal. It's not just merely at the front where the limelight shines on. They also have good quality midfielders and defenders, such as your former Portuguese youth international Rui Perez, Bailey Wright, who was in the Australia Socceroos squad for the 2022 World Cup, and you had Tony Dakovic, yes, another decent foreign purchase, Diogo Costa as well. And when you have these players who have been playing in the Singapore League this season, even though I think 1 or 2 are not exactly registered, but they have been playing together, it allows these players to adapt, to shape how the Sailors are going to play, particularly in Asian Club competition, and they are aided by their head coach Alexander Rakovic, the Serbian, who was previously an assistant in the Eredivisie, yes, the Dutch top flight. So you can see that in the Sailors case, there's extensive influence where the Dutch top flight experience has helped propel the Singapore Premier League leaders into the final of the ACL2, breaking the previous barrier where Geylang United, now Geylang International, and Home United, the previous team of Sailors, where they reached the semi-finals of the inaugural AFC Cup way back in 2004. So the ceiling has been broken, a new level has been thrust. And as for Johor, when they won the AFC Cup in 2015, they also had good quality foreigners and a strong stable of Malaysian internationals plus Haris Harun, who has now reached his 2nd Asian Club final with Sailors after their aggregate win yesterday. They also had Marcos Antonio, who used to play for Hamburg in the Bundesliga, the Brazilian defender, and you got Luciano Figueroa, who has won a few caps for Argentina, and also had played extensively in European clubs in the top European leagues. So this experience, this quality and education and exposure that these foreigners face are also as critical in lifting up that standard. Let's say with your top local players, you're probably at this level. But once you have good quality import players who are capable of rising to the occasion, it pushes up to a different level. And as you can see with Johor this season, where they finished third in the ACLE EZO League table, it clearly showed that the addition of good foreign players such as their Spanish goalkeeper Andoni Zubiaye, Juan Muniz, their attacking midfielders, Juan Muniz, I think before the arrival of Samu and I think Jonathan Vieira, I think and Oscar Arribas. You also have your overlapping fullbacks in Murillo and let me see. Then you have your back three, your core back three, predominantly led by Eddie Isafarov, and you also have Arif Aiman complementing that as the Malaysian ever-present, complementing this group of foreigners. And Arif Aiman is considered one of the best Malaysian footballer of his generation right now, and his impressive performances in the ACLE has also helped allow him to share the burden that these imports face. So, and where this is concerned, it has allowed them to defeat Korean clubs who are rather hamstrung by their domestic import regulations, and where due to the current climate in the Korean football ecosystem, clubs are not as willing to recruit foreigners even though they may not be registered for their domestic league. Unlike Johor, who have a number of players who are not registered in the domestic league. Then you had then still on Johor, I recall your the much maligned Obregon, who actually went on to have a good performance. Jesse Rodriguez, the striker who came good in the final group game as well. You have Bergson, who was effective. Herberti, the Brazilian striker who runs non-stop and can mow up the entire field with his high pressing and his super high work rate. Then you also have, in this case, because Johor have so many foreigners that they have used throughout this ACLE campaign, that off the top of my head, there are just so many. Like I already mentioned all these players. Then your later additions at the start of this year, which pushed them to help them cross over the line in reaching the knockout stages of the ACLE for the first time since the 2022 edition of the ACL. Then in Buriram's case, like in Arif Aiman of Johor, they have a Thai equivalent in Supana Mutena, who is one of the bright wonder kids of Thai football, who has already emerged as a mainstay in Thai national team and also for Buriram at club level. And you had a veteran in Tiraton Bumantan. Then who else also? Then apart from Curtis Good and Yongkus, you got your Bisolis, you got your Ali Kamara, who was a brute of strength, particularly in the round 16 against Johor. New Etheridge, one of the best Southeast Asian goalkeepers, with his steady pair of hands and quick reflexes, and good game judgment in reading the field around him, around his box, with a commanding presence in the area with his height and athleticism. And these were the foundations in which Buriram have allowed to propel themselves to match their previous high in Asian club competition. So, having this core of high quality imports and strong local players. So in the Sailors case, you have Izwan Mahmud, who is close to back to where he was at the peak of his powers in the mid-2010s. You have Haris Harun, who has certainly saved his best performances for Asia this season. Then you also have Shawa Anwar, who I mentioned earlier. He's at the top of his form for club and country these days. So, and you have your other stalwarts in Christopher Van Huizen, Lionel Tan, who are also, and Song Wee Yong, the Korean-born Singapore international midfielder who have played key roles in the Sailors Asian Club success, historic success in reaching the final. So having this level of European imports and committed good quality locals provided a perfect blend to see Southeast Asian clubs pushing and breaking barriers at the highest levels of competitions. And now I'll touch a bit on the Shopee Cup, which maybe some Southeast Asian fans may deride it as a waste of time, like why do they need the additional space? But incidentally, having the ASEAN Club, the revival of the ASEAN Club Championship in the Shopee Cup has allowed the Lion City Sailors and Buriram United to have additional overseas match competition and exposure. In this case, even though the Sailors did not reach the semi-finals, but these games proved to be useful for Rankovic to test out a few players, especially when they're up against different types of Southeast Asian opposition at the group stage, particularly when they defeated KLCT and drew 0-0 with Buriram. Buriram also used it as a good testing ground for their regular substitutes to expose themselves against overseas competition, which provides a different level of variety in terms of the playing style, in terms of the mentality, in terms of how these different clubs from different nations approach games when they come up against foreign opposition. That has allowed them to build up these players, to build up experience points, to build up the competitive level that is needed, especially when they reach into the Asian club competitions where they face clubs from outside Southeast Asia. In both JDT and Buriram, they face against the top clubs in South Korea, China and Japan. For Sailors, they have already faced clubs from China, in Sydney FC of Australia, and yes, a bit of good fortune in the quarterfinals because one of the top Japanese clubs, Sanfrecce Hiroshima, they fielded an ineligible foreigner in the first leg, which handed Sailors a fortuitous 3-0 away leg win when it was an initial 1-6 defeat. But it allowed them to build a momentum where Jalan Besar has become a fortress in their 1-1 second leg draw that allowed them to advance and defeat Sydney FC. So when you have this kind of varying levels of exposure against the best that East Asia has to offer, it is quite clear that having good quality foreigners from Europe and South America, and also to an extent in Asia, allow the Lion City Sailors, Johor Darul Takzim and Buriram United to excel in Asian club competition this year. And I think this is integral to how future game models or squad models that Southeast Asian clubs will enter Asian club competition and are serious in going through the motions of playing in the group stage or the league stage and that's it. No, in aspiring to reach the knockout rounds where the real business of the competition begins. I think having this perfect blend is the template for Southeast Asian clubs to follow, especially the East Asian leagues where China, South Korea and Japan, they still stick to their roster of foreigners who also play in the domestic league. I think having that blend has allowed them to overnight, let's say China, South Korea, Japan, previously Southeast Asia is at this level, now it's closing this gap. So this has allowed Southeast Asian clubs to excel in Asia this season, and it has been a breakthrough campaign for Southeast Asia as a whole. And who knows, maybe in the next few seasons we might see Johor, Buriram and Sailors repeat this again, or could until the East Asian clubs decide that they may need a few extra foreigners to really widen the gap again. Until then, I can see in the immediate next 2-3 Asian club campaigns that Southeast Asian clubs will excel and reach the knockout stages on a regular basis in this period of time. Until then, Yep. So before I end, I'm glad to be able to do this video once again after a couple of weeks away. So I promise to television viewers that I will do at least a video every week to keep you guys informed, to share with your the best expertise and also my insights on games in Southeast Asia. And until then, catch up with you again.